It's big day on Overdrive because we have with us the largest Ducati there is, the Multistrada Enduro. It's got 160 PS, all the electronics, and it's supposed to cross continents. Will it?
The basic engine is unchanged, so that's the 1200cc 90-degree V-twin that makes 160 PS. The world's first production motorcycle engine with fully variable valve timing and a suite of electronics that beggars belief. But that isn't all. In keeping with the idea of the off-road role, Ducati went and lowered the first gear ratio because you're likely to be doing a fair amount of crawling in that gear. It also lowered the overall final drive. This might compromise top speed, but it is intended to keep the acceleration similar to the normal Multistrada despite the extra weight of the Enduro. What else has Ducati done?
So it's the Multistrada Enduro, which means it's supposed to go off-road. I'm standing up to show you what Ducati has done to make this happen. So my feet, they're on cleated pegs like the off-road bikes would. The mirrors are redesigned, they're positioned back so my forearms can do this when I'm standing up without the mirrors interfering with them. The suspension obviously has longer travel. Right now the bike is off and the suspension technically is off, so there is no damping, so it feels really tall and I am a long way off the ground. So in theory, it's got all the bits in place. Even the Scorpion Trail tires, I mean, those tires go a long way off-road before you need something more serious. But my point is, this bike will go off-road, but it's 280 kilos with a full tank of gas. How many people do you think who have the skill and the courage to take something this large, this capable and this powerful? It's 100 PS, remember, even in the off-road mode. How many people will really take this off-road?
But it looks like the business, doesn't it? The enormous 30-litre tank is made of matte plastic which is covered with new bodywork, including the matte green panel and the brushed aluminium panels. The taller ride height and these panels look terrific together. Ducati has also removed the side panel and offers the low seat as standard specification in India and Southeast Asia, and that completes the off-roader look. The comprehensive bash plate and the tucked-in as well as higher exhaust mark out greater ability in hard going, and finally, the front wheel, it's a 19-inch wheel with both rims are tubeless and spoked. This is the complete package. But that much fuel, all that metal.
It's difficult to hide the heft and the girth of this motorcycle. If you're riding around in the city, for example, with a full tank of gas, you'll realize two things. One, it's a really large motorcycle and slow speed maneuvers can take a little bit of work. You do have to fidget with the electronics and somehow lower the ride height, which means going down on the preload or switching to urban mode or something, and that tends to help a little bit, despite the fact that the Indian Multistrada gets the low seat as standard. The other thing you'll realize, much warmer motorcycle than you were expecting, because I think the tank blocks the normal path of the air that comes out of the radiator, unfortunately directed up towards you. At 103, the fan comes on and makes it much worse. So while it doesn't look like it, it's a really warm motorcycle to ride.
The other little nuance is that the Enduro also feels slower than the regular Multi, and this time I'm referring to its reflexes rather than its weight. You see, the Enduro steering geometry is calmer and the wheelbase is longer to make for a more stable platform. This is important because the basic Multistrada takes more or less after a sports bike, and that would be too hairy and reactive in off-road conditions for a rider to have to deal with. What I'm saying is that I think there may be a motorcycle required in this story now to bring perspective and clarity to the Enduro's proposition.
And that motorcycle would be the Ducati Multistrada 1200S. Now in the story it comes now, but in the real story it came first. It has all the bits that motorcycle has in terms of the electronic suspension and the traction control, etc. What it loses out perhaps, 19-inch front wheel, it's got a 17, less travel at either end, and the 2017 Enduro has a hill hold which this 2017 will get. This is a 2016 test bike. So 60,000 rupees less than the Enduro, but is this the better motorcycle?
As you can infer from the story so far, the Multistrada 1200S is lighter, smaller and a bit quicker than the Enduro in the corners as well as down the straight. It also happens to have the same electronic control suspension as the Enduro, albeit with 30 mm less travel at both ends. It also gets normal 17-inch alloy wheels and the Pirelli Scorpion Trail 2 tires, which are supposed to be a great balance between road riding and off-road trail bashing. And in testing, the 1200S proves to be a stunner. It remains a lot cooler in traffic for the rider, possibly because of the way the heat flows away from the radiator rather than the engine itself. It also feels a lot easier to ride because the Enduro is heavier, and on a full tank, The Enduro carries the weight higher and feels worse for it. But still more important is the simple fact that the 1200S feels eager, accurate, responsive, and very involving to ride in almost every condition. That's light traffic, heavy traffic, out on the highway, light off-roading, and indeed the racetrack. It's really hard to believe how different in feel the 1200S and the Enduro are from each other. But in design terms, it's vastly closer and a lot more personal. The success of Ducati's design lies in its ability to take two such similar looking motorcycles and make them appear so different. The 1200S looks like a road bike while the Enduro looks like a scary off-roading monster. Both are clearly cousins but have different abilities and impossible presence. This is nice work, especially if you recall how the first Multistrada looked. And now, let's focus on the present.
So, decision time. What should you be buying? That's 23.1 lakhs approximately on road Bombay. That is 22.4. So, in terms of the 70,000 rupees extra that you pay for the Enduro, no doubt about it, much more equipment for the money, because you get that enormous fuel tank, you get longer travel suspension, you get a center stand. There's no doubt about it, value for money is here. But the difference between these two to me is that this is a bomber and this is a fighter. If you want to pick a dogfight, that's the motorcycle. It's sharp, it's light, it feels usable every single day. That is a bomber. It requires an occasion, it requires a big distance to justify its weight and its ability. And yes, if you see a bad road, it doesn't even bother it. So the question really is, what are your ideas about riding? Is it the fighter's idea for riding or a bomber's idea of riding? Me, I'm a fighter.